What up, everybody? At the end of Raising Kanan Season 1, Marvin was arrested for an outstanding warrant after he was snitched on by Tony Deep. But at the beginning of Season 2, Marvin beat that case because Tony didn't show up to court. But regardless of that, Marvin was still trying to get information about Tony Deep's whereabouts so he could take her out for snitching on him. He later found out that Tony had married a dentist and was living large in Westchester. But Marvin knew he wouldn't be able to take out Tony himself because the cops in Westchester were already watching him, suspicious and harassing him just for the short time he was there. So when Rock met up with Sal Buscemi to make a deal, Marvin started small talk with his son, Marco, only to find out that Marco lived in Scarsdale. Because of that, Marco decided to hire Marco to handle his rat problem for him up in his neck of the woods, Tony Deep. But Marco's condition for doing this job for Marvin was that his father wouldn't know anything about it. So Marco and Mafia outcast Dominic showed up to Tony's house to do the hit. Marco busted in the door and put one to Tony's head. But Dominic, instead of having Marco's back, just started firing at Tony, allowing Tony's husband to come in and tackle Marco, ultimately resulting in Dominic shooting Marco by accident and Marco's death. But Sal Buscemi later found out that it was Dominic who was with Marco during this home invasion when he was killed, and Dominic let Sal know that they were doing a job for Marvin Thomas before Sal ordered his men to kill Dominic. This resulted in Sal trying to make a compromise with Rock to give up her brother as a peace offering. But when she refused, he sent a whole army of soldiers to try to wipe out the Thomas family and Rock's entire operation completely off the map, sending soldiers to all three of the project buildings that Rock was trapping out of, and sending men to Bulletproof Records studio and also to Rock's home to take her out personally. And even though several of Rock's men was killed during these attacks, the Thomas family was more formidable than Sal expected, and every one of them survived. But Sal's decision to make a public display had consequences. Mafia overboss Stefano Marchetti was very upset about how Sal chose to handle his business and the fact that he didn't even get the job done in the process. Because of that, he wanted Sal dead, and he tasked Rock with the responsibility of handling the job, with the agreement that this would be the last he asked of her and that she could get out the game after if she wanted. So Rock had Marvin do the job of killing Sal Buscemi, dressing up like a postal worker. And even though Marvin successfully got this job done, he also had to shoot it out with several of Sal's men who could have possibly been able to identify him. Either though there was no more mentioning of the New Jersey Mafia after Marvin took out Sal Buscemi. And another consequence of the Mafia attacks that night was the feds opening up an investigation into what happened. And this is when Agent Tanner came onto the scene. Rock and Howard tried pinning everything on Crown Camacho, and the local cops might have even bought it, but Tanner wasn't and was calling Crown a red herring. Because of this, Rock and Howard had Demo talk to Tanner to go back and pin everything on Crown Camacho again, saying he saw him at Baisley Projects all the time. But at the end of the conversation, Tanner asked Demo about Raquel Thomas when Demo called her Rock and asked what she had to do with all this. That raised a red flag for Agent Tanner, causing him to circle back around looking into Rock, and ultimately causing Marvin to become the focus of their investigation. And when Tanner started questioning Howard about Marvin, and if he was capable of running such an operation, Howard didn't have Marvin's back, but sold him out, and eventually was telling Rock that somebody had to take the fall for what happened, and that it needed to be Marvin. In addition to that, the feds had Marvin linked to the Buscemi crew, and tenants at Baisley's and the 40s placed him at both locations. Not to mention Marvin already had a record for distribution. Because of this, Marvin was checking out all the boxes when it came to suspects that the feds were investigating into. In addition to that, they also knew that Jukebox recorded a song under the label Bulletproof Records, and they were using Gerald as a CI to get close to Marvin to see what more information he could get. Then, after the death of one of Gerald's daughters, he confessed to Marvin that he was working with the FBI, and Gerald later died at the end of the episode of an apparent overdose. But the feds did say that the circumstances of Gerald's death were suspicious, but they didn't have anything they could prove. So I think there's a chance that Marvin might have had something to do with Gerald's death, and this could come back into play with the Fed's investigation in Season 4. Then the Feds even connected Howard to Marvin Thomas, saying if he's connected to Marvin Thomas, then he's connected to organized crime, because they knew that Howard had been looking for Lou when he went missing. Tanner even called Howard the best and only lead that they had at the time, and gave him 2 days before they would come and talk to him again. During this time is when Howard connected with Rock because of the situation that Kanan got into, and leaning on her all the more about pinning everything on Marvin and making him take the fall. Because of that, after Kanan killed Ronnie, Rock picked up Ronnie's gun and killed Malcolm Howard, leaving both their bodies at the crime scene, hoping that this would clear Marvin's name by pinning everything on Howard and Ronnie, possibly also making it look like Unique was involved, because Ronnie was his brother, and Ronnie was also still in jail when most of the stuff with the Italians was going on. And this is where we are heading into Season 4 of Raising Kanan. So there's a chance that the Feds could get off the Thomas family's backs after Howard's death, and they might just pin everything on Ronnie and Unique. But at the same time, wouldn't that be convenient that Howard dies right after they connected him to Marvin Thomas? But Tanner isn't stupid, so this might only escalate the investigation into Marvin and the Thomas family as a whole, especially if they had any type of eyes on Howard after he left the meeting with Captain Baptiste and Agent Tanner, and if anyone saw him with Rock the day he was killed, because Howard showed up at Rock's house and was also seen in public with her and Marvin when they went to meet up with Snaps and Pop. So the death of Howard could do one of two things: cause the Feds to go away, pinning everything on Howard, Ronnie, and Unique, or cause them to double down, looking into Marvin and the Thomas family. But that's not the only problem that Marvin's going to have in Season 4, because we know that the New Jersey Italian Mafia will be returning onto the scene under the leadership of their new boss, Phil Russo. And we know that the New Jersey Mafia isn't returning onto the scene for no reason. They will most likely be looking for answers about what happened to their former boss, Sal Baselli, feeling like they can't let his death go unanswered. Because of that, Marvin and the entire Thomas family could be in danger from the Italian Mafia in Season 4. And this could be why the Season 4 teaser shows Marvin handing Jukebox a gun, because their family might be in danger from the Italian Mafia. Also keep in mind it was said that Stefano Marchetti's fish shop was bugged, yet he still called Marvin the mailman right there in his shop for the Feds to hear if in fact the shop is bugged. So Marvin could have Italian Mafia problems and Fed problems in Season 4, keeping in mind what the Season 4 teaser says. Before you can figure out where you're going, you gotta look back at where you've been. Because there's things that happened that seem like they didn't mean nothing at the time, but then you realize they mean everything. So we'll see how this statement impacts Marvin in Season 4 as he tries to survive another season in the game. And there you have it. Leave your thoughts, theories, and predictions in the comments.